Hello, everybody. This is a panel on legal experts panel, but we have more than legal experts here. We have the Honorable Minister for Climate Change. We have seasoned bankers, climate professionals, and regulators today. The topic of the discussion is advancing legal and regulatory readiness for climate financing and bondholder engagement in Pakistan. The panel will discuss three major themes. The first theme is how can law and regulation encourage climate finance in emerging markets such as Pakistan, including through conventional and Islamic bonds and similar debt instruments. Um, the questions that we will address to all the panelists will be how can we advance and accelerate climate finance and investment pathways in Pakistan in immediate and near term across all MAR areas in vulnerable nations? How ready are we as a nation? And what can be achieved through bondholder engagement in Pakistan and similar key countries internationally? These are the three major areas which I will ask every panelist to address when their turn comes. The session is hosted by the Karachi Center for Climate Change, of which I am a director, the Ministry of Climate Change, and the Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute, represented by Mr. Andrew Sulston. I'll just do a brief introduction of the Madam Minister, and then I'll introduce each panelist as and when their turn comes. Dr. Shazra Mansab Ali Khan Kharal, she's a Minister for State and a member of the National Assembly of Pakistan since 2024. She has served in previous roles from March 2015 to May 2018. She comes from a very seasoned and respected family of politicians and writers. Madam Minister holds a PhD in English literature from Glasgow, um, and she has served on various committees, standing committees of the Parliament. She's been the chairperson of National Education Foundation, where she has worked for access to education for all out-of-school children. She's also served as the chairperson of the National Commission for Human Development and has represented Pakistan in various international forums, specifically in relation to Pakistan-China trade and commerce. Madam Minister is also a special envoy on Kashmir and representative of Pakistan to UNESCO. She has served as the president of the Women Youth Wing of Punjab and senior vice president Punjab for PMLN, the party which she represents, where she has actively mobilized women in politics and promoted women empowerment. Madam Minister has also served as the parliamentary secretary for Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Madam Minister, would you like to give a brief opening comments, and especially, from the perspective of what Pakistan hopes to achieve at this COP30, briefly, and then of course we will ask you to close the session as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Bulent, and to all the panelists who are here. We unfortunately weren't able to be physically there at the COP, but just as all other countries in the global south, we're looking towards implementation of the promises. We recently again had devastating floods in Pakistan, and we've had a huge loss economically as well as livestock and human livelihoods. And whereas Pakistan, of course, which I will later on elaborate, is working on mitigation, but more so on adaptation. Of course, at COP, we hope to get better results on implementation by our international partners. And I would like to thank all the panelists for being here, and I look forward to hearing from them on the legal aspects. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Minister. So I'd like this discussion to be more of a conversational style. While I will be asking questions, I will also seek your indulgence if I interrupt you or ask you an additional question, because you know the we have very senior people here, and I think the more lively the discussion, the better. I'm going to start with Mr. Khurram Lalani. Khurram is a dear friend of mine, and he is the CEO and founder of Resources Future, which is a Pakistan-based advisory firm specializing in climate finance, carbon markets, and low carbon development. He heads Resources Future's work on carbon credit project development, including Article 6 readiness. Khurram also advises governments, Pakistan and international governments, such as Laos, Abu Dhabi, the development partners, and DFIs on climate finance reforms. His recent engagements include supporting policy work on climate budget tagging, green taxonomy implementation, public investment management for climate CPMA, adaptation finance assessments, sustainability reporting, scope 1 and 2, its adoption in Pakistan as well as in the Gulf region. Khurram, I'll ask you to um, talk about a bit of the climate finance landscape in Pakistan, what the ecosystem is, um, how ready are we in terms of policy and the regulatory legal framework, both from the perspective of the government, of regulators such as SECP and the State Bank, and the Ministry of Finance. The floor is yours, sir.
Sure. Thank you, Bulent. Thank you, everyone, for having me over here. Bulent has given a very elaborated introduction, which I don't really deserve. But I'll go into the factual outline of the climate finance ecosystem that we have in Pakistan. And I think any ecosystem really requires a good diagnostic. So, what started 3 years ago, the government started with PIMA and CPIMA assessment, which is part of the broader IMF framework. And really, the idea was to identify gaps in integrating climate risks into its public investment decisions. And CBIMA is quite elaborate. The reform was signed, the action plan was signed at the end of December 2023, which essentially set a very structured pathway for improving climate relevant public investment governance in Pakistan. So that is on the public side. I will go over on the public side first, then I'll quickly touch upon the private sector side as well. Very quickly, we also have in 2023, and I think all these reforms sort of coincided in the last 3 years or so. That also shows the kind of impetus that we have when it comes to public sector governance. So we have now a national adaptation plan. The NAP was developed back in 2023, identifies medium to long-term priorities and integration of adaptation into sectoral planning. As Madam Minister herself just highlighted, adaptation is very core to Pakistan. And anything that we want to do, we want to make sure that adaptation remains a very central pillar. We also have, in terms of PFM reforms, we also have budgeting reforms, and now we have implemented climate budget tagging also. In the space of the last 2 to 3 years, we now have published books. Whenever our budget comes out, it has gender budget tagging, it has disaster budget tagging, it also has a climate budget tagging. So I'm not going to go into all the details that go inside it, but there is quite an elaborate tagging exercise that has really gone into identifying all the cost centers and tagging into whether it is mitigation, adaptation, or cross-cutting expenditure item. On the private sector side, and I think we have SECP with us, who's going to elaborate more on this. But on the regulatory side, I think the impetus has really been on the adoption of IFRS S1 and S2 standards. And SECP has mandated that all the listed companies will start reporting beginning from 1st of January 2025, which is this year, and hopefully, I think subsequent cohorts in 2026 and 2027 will have S1 and S2 reporting, which will bring a lot more credibility into this entire process, whereby the corporates will have to get involved and really disclose pretty much everything that they do around sustainability. Previously, the practice has been that financial reporting has been one standard, and the sustainability reporting has been on the other side of the process. Now, with S1 and S2, there will be a focus on integrated reporting. Whenever you read up a report, you tend to feel that financial report don't really correspond with the sustainability report. But with S1 and S2, the focus will be on one coherent set of reporting. Just very quickly, we also now have a green taxonomy, and the State Bank of Pakistan has really worked. The initiative was led by the World Bank, but MOCC played a very pivotal part. And now we have a classification system for green activities. So whether it is adaptation, whether it is mitigation, we want to make sure that we align capital with climate goals and to have instruments which can then really finance those activities. So the labeling of those instruments and the labeling of those activities is now very important and has become functional. On the carbon markets and Article 6, we have now policy guidelines for trading in carbon markets, which were launched in COP29. The draft carbon market rules have already been put out for public comment in 2025. And the Ministry of Climate Change has also granted initial host country approvals. So we are heading in the right direction. We are trying to solicit a lot more transactions under Article 6 framework. And really, the list of reforms in Pakistan is really, really endless. We've also published our NDCs 3.0. The NDCs were submitted couple of months ago, I believe in September of 2025. And now we've got an updated NDCs also, which is going to pave the path forward for future climate commitments. Last, we also have tapped into the external climate finance access. And if you look at the reform agenda that we have also signed up for IMF Resilience and Sustainability Trust Fund. So we've got an active RSF program, which is $1 billion worth of IMF funding to Pakistan based on the climate commitments that we've assured. So overall, the strength is now that we've got a very clear policy. We've got our NAPs, NDCs, initial climate budget tagging systems, mandatory sustainability disclosures in S1 and S2, published green taxonomy, and pretty much a very defined pathway for carbon market operations. So I'm going to stop here. I know it's very long, but this is the breadth of the reforms that we have undertaken in the last few years, which really speaks volume when it comes to on the public reform agenda that we have committed. So back to you, Bulent.
Thank you. It was a very important and comprehensive overview. Yeah, and this has been done on fast track basis. I mean, I believe the 2022 floods really jolted the nation into action. And personally, I'm very proud of the work done on fast track basis. So this session is called Legal Readiness for Climate Finance, and this is a very defined term and globally accepted term. We had the pleasure of hosting, Khurram and I had the pleasure of hosting last year when we did our climate finance summit. We had the pleasure of hosting Professor Megan Bauman from King's College. She is the person who has been credited with coining this term because she has made several academic strides in this area, especially in relation to climate finance pathways with financial institution regulators. There's three pillars basically, and this is for the audience. So strong domestic laws to call in climate finance and to put out investable deals. That requires an integrated, coherent regulatory system across finance, financial markets, financial sector, environment, and ecosystem. which of course necessitates or preambles. You got to have a strong regulatory capacity, especially on the central bank side and on the SEC side, when it comes to climate risks, tagging, and creating, enabling pathways for future investments. The one thing that I want to add, Khurram, to your overview is the country prosperity plan. This has been spearheaded by the Ministry of Finance and the Vulnerable 20 Forum. Our dear friend Hamza Haroon is here at COP, and this plan will be announced tomorrow. That's very exciting because what the ministry has done with the help of experts is develop about 70 or 80 pre-feasibilities around various carbon projects, potential carbon projects in Pakistan. So kind of a mapping exercise of how much, NDC based, of course, what is our capacity to sequester carbon, as well as, on the mitigation and adaptation side. So I'm looking forward to that. I wish this session was held day after tomorrow so I could add more details. So with this, I'm going to invite Mr. Saim Ali. Saim Ali is a seasoned economist, banker. He's the head of treasury and the chief economist of Bank of Punjab, which is one of the largest public sector banks in the country. Bank of Punjab has the largest portfolio of adaptation financing of all the banks. But I'll let Saim add to that. Saim, you're also the head of AI at the Bank of Punjab. I'm very intrigued to know what that entails as well. Over to you. Sorry, just one more thing. Saim is also one of the drafters of Urhan Pakistan, which is our national economic policy. He worked very closely with the Prime Minister's office and with a very seasoned gentleman from Oxford, Professor Stefan Tekron. Over to you, Saim. Saim, can you hear me?
Thank you, Bulent. Apologies, got a bad connection. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's great to see that so much work is being done on the environmental agenda, and we are seeing some progress over here. So let me just highlight some of the things that the banking sector in Pakistan is doing, and what are the lessons that we've learned so far, and what we are doing to make financing more inclusive, focused on resilience, and making the industries more competitive. So currently the situation is that overall financing for these projects, sustainable projects, is extremely limited. Most of the technology that is being adopted for the mitigation and adaptation investments, for the banks, it's very hard to provide financing given the risk attached to this. So the way the banks are trying to de-risk the overall agenda, and also trying to increase the financing, is through mostly blended finance. So the idea is that if the government, the public sector, comes in and provides us with risk guarantees, then we are able to provide more lending towards these investments, especially for clean energy. And that's an area where we are focused on. Also, we're seeing that there is an increase in appetite vis-a-vis electric vehicles. So that is an area in which banks are increasing financing for these cars. And looking ahead, what we want to see is more bankable projects coming in from the government. And for that, really, all of the the public sector, the private sector, and the international agencies need to work together to create that infrastructure. So most of the concessional finance we're getting from the international agencies is, it is being utilized for public sector projects. But if it was used like the Green Climate Fund, which can help to pull in global and domestic private capital into these climate investment projects, that will help to channel more resources towards these investments. And that's an area where we are focused on, and the banks want that more capital is pulled into these resources. Also, we are looking at offering partial risk guarantees, which
So
will be.
I'll just add to your and for the audience's benefit. This is what you're discussing is really Basel III related constraints on development finance in the climate sector. So I'm here actually at COP representing the International Chamber of Commerce as I chair the national committee. So one of the areas which ICC is lobbying, and ICC is the largest partner to UNFCCC this year. What they're lobbying for is to clarify the climate-aligned, project finance in emerging markets, especially in emerging markets, to make certain clarifications to lessen the stringent application of Basel III. With respect to risk weighting by the banks. So, for example, under the Basel III norms, a Pakistani bank must reserve 100% capital against long-term project loans when it comes to climate finance, and that's, in my opinion, is very, very prohibitive. In my recent discussions with the State Bank of Pakistan, they did mention that part of the taxonomy exercise implementation would be to develop guidelines to mitigate this stringent requirement. So to help the banks, de-risk projects. So I just wanted to add that, Saim, to your discussion. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Bulent. So that's pretty much it from my side. If you have any questions, I'll be very happy to answer.
I'd like to ask you, we'll get to that later, but just keep it in mind in the back of your head that I will be bringing you in, especially with respect to, because Punjab has a very heavy presence in this COP. As you know, the chief minister was here. They're in effect running a large part of the pavilion with several events at the pavilion. So I'll bring you in the later part of this discussion from Punjab's perspective and what Bank of Punjab intends to do, to bring adaptation financing to your province. Okay, so now I'm going to ask Mr. Hamid Sharif to join. Mr. Hamid Sharif is a very seasoned professional. Hamid Sharif Saab has over 30 years of experience in international development. He has served in very senior positions in ADB, including as Assistant General Counsel and ADB Country Director for China. At the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank, he was Managing Director for oversight functions and reported directly to the board. He is now back in legal practice at home and is a mediator and arbitrator. He serves as the president of a prestigious global think tank network in Pakistan. Over to you, Hamid Saab. We discussed that Mr. Hamid Sharif would be speaking about the potential for the bond market in Pakistan, especially from an adaptation perspective. The reason why I've asked him to speak on this is that he is working with AIB and the I believe the Finance Ministry of China to develop the framework for panda bonds. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Bulent. pleasure to be here. Good to see you, Minister, again on this forum. I'm going to talk a bit about Pakistan's quest to launch its first panda bond. The good news is that I think this year, very significant progress has been made. So, as you know, Pakistan is under an IMF program. So its ability to access non-concessional funding is constrained by its debt sustainability analysis and the fact that, IMF will make sure that Pakistan does not contract debt which it cannot afford and cannot service. So there are those constraints. Against those constraints, I think it's quite significant that two multilateral development banks, AIB and ADB, have both agreed to provide guarantees so that Pakistan's credit rating is of investment grade for the purposes of issuance of these bonds. So that I think is quite good progress. Underwriters are in place, I believe, and so we're now in the final stages with some internal approvals and some external approvals from the Chinese authorities, which I believe will come along. And so by December or sometime in December, we expect that Pakistan would issue its panda bond. Having said that, it is debt. And Pakistan is not in a place to keep on contracting a lot of debt. But yet, the panda bond market is, of course, very attractive because it is, in terms of non-concessional funding, is probably the cheapest source of fund available at market prices. So it is going to be a significant market for Pakistan. And the question is that, can Pakistan really be a repeat issuer in this market? And I think that's where the whole macroeconomic situation in Pakistan comes into play, given the precarious or at least below investment grade rating. It will continue to need guarantees, which will make it slightly more expensive than would be the case otherwise. So I think that's and of course its debt sustainability has to improve. So I think Pakistan's ability to tap the panda markets on a regular basis will very much depend on its ability to implement the IMF program and turn the economy around so that there is a very positive outlook, and Pakistan's debt sustainability and its ability to basically bring in dollars from exports does increase. Even with that, I think there are two further constraints which Pakistan will face. One is that there is weak capacity within the government to develop projects which are bankable. So I think that is going to be a very serious concern, and that is something Pakistan needs to address urgently, working because Pakistan is a federal state, so the federation has actually, under the 18th constitutional amendment, given a lot of the action for climate change to the provinces, and it's really the provinces which need to step up, and they need to start pitching projects and creating projects, which are bankable. And there again, the capacity is extremely weak. The other thing which Pakistan, I think, will have to build its capacity on is, of course, monitoring, reporting, and verification. I think if you look at countries which have been able to successfully tap concessional funds, whether it's panda bonds are not concessional, but even for panda bonds, and if you want to launch them as green bonds, as sustainability bonds, you need to have very good MRV. And you need strong MRV also to tap GCF and other climate funds. And of course, there's a lot of reports out there which show that countries which don't have strong MRV they're likely not to get access to those funds. So I think MRV is going to be a very major issue that Pakistan needs to address. And on MRV, I think it also needs to tackle the current problem of fragmented mandate. So in the government, it's not clear which ministry actually has the responsibility. There are now various the line ministries, the planning ministry, the finance ministry, the climate ministry. Each one of them seem to have that responsibility. So in practice, that would mean none of them have that responsibility. So I think this is low-hanging fruit, which I think Pakistan can very quickly address. And I think just in terms of blended finance, I think the best use of these panda bonds would be if they were mingled with concessional funds, which again, I said, Pakistan has not been doing terribly well on. It has had some success in the last couple of years, to be fair, but when you compare to its other South Asian countries, for example, India has tapped in the order of about 50 billion. Pakistan is well below 5 billion. I think it's about 3 billion or even less. And Bangladesh has tapped about 7 billion plus. So I think, there is a lot of work to be done on that, because only by bringing in that concessional funding will we be able to blend the proceeds of the more expensive panda bonds and other non-concessional funding to provide finance which actually will make the projects viable. I'll stop here, Bulent, for now. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have just one quick clarification, Mansab. What areas is China intending to utilize this panda bond? Is the focus on all the Mar areas, resilience, adaptation, mitigation, or is it the focus would be on CPEC projects? We're not sure where the application of these funds will go. Could you elaborate on that as well? If you're on mute.
My understanding is that, there will be broadly sustainability bonds, so they would meet some criteria. I don't think they necessarily have to be CPEC projects as such. I think certainly ADB and AIB, who are the guarantors, are quite agnostic about whether these are CPEC projects or not. So I don't think we need to get hung up on that, because every time China comes up, we always think of CPEC. I think, Chinese are not necessarily linked to, for the purpose of these panda bonds. I think, as long as they can go into what are broadly sustainable projects, it would be good enough for this purpose. Thank you.
Thank you for this clarification. I would like to invite a very seasoned regulator who's present with us, Mr. Muzaffar Ahmed Mirza. Mr. Mirza is a lawyer by profession, and he's currently the commissioner of the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. He heads the licensing portfolio at the commission. So just for the background of our audience, there's two primary financial regulators in the country. It's the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, which regulates all non-banking financial institutions, including insurance. So, and it also regulates all the incorporation of all kinds of companies, from private to public to NPOs. So SEC has a very large mandate. In addition to that, SEC is a custodian of the IFRS standards, of course, including climate standards, Scope 1, 2, and eventually 3. And SECP also monitors, regulates the Code of Corporate Governance in the country. And through the Code of Corporate Governance, the SECP has made environmental reporting, climate reporting mandatory on the boards of listed companies and publicly important companies. Mr. Mirza, prior to being elevated as a commissioner, he served for the past 18 years as the executive director of law, policy, and legislation at SECP. And he was also the chief public prosecutor at SECP. During his time, I think we've seen incredible corporate sector reforms, including the New Companies Act, including all sorts of regulatory and legal interventions, such as the Audit Oversight Board, the AML regime. So he's extremely seasoned. Mr. Mirza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bulent, for the introduction. We are striving our best at SECP to ensure that we introduce more and more regimes for the private sector to utilize green funding. You're aware that you asked me a question regarding as to what we are doing with respect to the green bond regime. I'm happy to announce that we have now, with the name of Pravas Financial Services, we have already launched a bond which was around 3.5 billion US dollars and $1 billion. In the government sector, we had sovereign fund, federal government through capital market, and for a size of 30 billion. With a three-year tenure. So we have two, one market, one private sector, and one in capital market bonds, which relates to green bonds, and that's a success story. But I think there's a lot of room to do more. Especially, we have to now venture into. We have to bring some product for the mutual funds as well, and grow this green bond industry in Pakistan. You have any question? Bulent, any question?
Yes, my question would be, what steps can SECP take to enable, ease of introducing bonds through PSX? At the moment, we have a very traditional model that's in place. I mean, could you shed light on any regulatory interventions that SECP can make for ease of doing business through SECP and the Pakistan Stock Exchange, which of course SECP regulates the stock exchange. If you could shed any light on that.
Bulent, as you know, we are in an IMF program, and one of the biggest incentive can be for such kind of bonds will be some tax incentives. We are not in a position to right now give any tax concessions, and that's so we have a limited resources, and in a limited environment we are working in a very challenging environment that we are working. But I think mutual fund industry is one which can help a lot, and I think in going forward we will be introducing some with the help of the mutual fund industry some new regime, so that this is accessible to people and market can play its role.
Okay. So, Andrew Sulston, I think this is a great time for you to join the discussion. I'll just give a brief introduction of Andrew. So, Andrew is a senior legal advisor at the Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute. and leads research on bondholder engagement tools. He'll be speaking about how legal and market mechanisms can help investors drive transition outcomes in debt markets. An important complement to the labeled bond frameworks we have been discussing. I've bombarded Andrew with a lot of material from Pakistan, and he's been very kind to make his discussion Pakistan specific. I think, Andrew, prior to joining the Fixed Income Institute, you were a part of a Magic Circle firm on capital markets globally. I think you bring a lot of experience to this discussion. And I would also request you to, in what the previous speakers have discussed, you may also pose questions to the regulator, to Mr. Hamid Sharif, and to Mr. Khurram Lalani, who's a very seasoned climate finance expert. Oh, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Bulent, and thank you for the kind introduction. Thank you, Madam Minister, also for inviting Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute, AFII, to take part in this panel. Following on from what you say, we would acknowledge Pakistan's very impressive progress in legal readiness for sustainable finance. In particular, as you say, you've shared really important materials on the work on the taxonomy, green bond, green sukuk frameworks, and these are vital labeled instruments, and they all point to what can be achieved, to the potential when clear legal and regulatory pathways are in place. Now, at AFII, we know that fixed income markets form a large part of global financing and have the power to propel the climate transition for nations and corporates. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and we provide research and portfolio tools to help fixed income investors have impact and also direct capital to sustainable long-term investment. What I'd like to do is just briefly to share some recent research we've been doing on a different aspect here, tools for engagement, for investor engagement in the fixed income markets, looking at how investors can use their position to engage more effectively with issuers. This supports transition and resilience, and the tools we've identified can help direct investment towards a just transition and encourage meaningful dialogue in the markets, strengthen accountability, and help reduce greenwashing risk. So the background to this, importantly, is that we know most engagement practice comes from the equity world, and yet fixed income markets finance the majority of global economic activity, whether it's on concessionary or non-concessionary basis. So that leaves a very large underused opportunity. And if we want real-world transition, the conversation has to include the asset owners, the investors. And there are many reasons for investors and also for issuers to focus on having quality engagement. It's really about sound risk management and working towards greater market efficiency. So the toolkit we put together in this research draws on discussions with many market professionals, all our supporters, and our aim was to show how engagement can happen within existing market and legal structures. And we assessed the tools we identified for both influence and feasibility. We put together measures there to assess the influence on issuers, but also the deliverability. Is it technically, is it economically, is it legally realistic? And from this, we identified 3 priority tools. The first, so these are the top ranked by influence and feasibility. The first would be fixed income holder meetings So typically bondholder meetings, these are long established rights where normally 10% or more of investors can call security holder meetings. And they give investors a formal and legitimate platform for collective dialogue with issuers. They're rarely used, but they could be used to engage on transition strategy and risk. And second, we identified the use of fixed income indices, which come in many shapes, but they drive huge capital flows, especially for passive investors. And if sustainability criteria are reflected within index methodologies, then they can link an issuer's cost of capital directly to its transition performance. This is the upside for issuers. And thirdly, for engagement effectiveness, we identified choice of timing. So engagement is most effective when issuers are refinancing or raising new capital. And at those moments, investors have great leverage. And clear signals can influence the nature of the ongoing financing. So all of those structures exist. We already have them, but they need to be used more deliberately. We think they can be used more deliberately for good effect in engagement. And very briefly, I'll just, we identified 8 further tools. I'll mention briefly, and for each asset owner, for each investor, it can be that some tools are better suited than others. So there are contractual tools, climate-related covenants, transition-linked put options, and also clearer mandate terms between asset owners and the investment managers. That would be effective. There are collaborative approaches where investors act together, or where issuers themselves initiate the dialogue with investors. And then there are enabling measures, and these are of the type we've been hearing about so far. Clearer regulatory guidance, in this case, particularly on competition and inside information rules. That would give investors confidence to collaborate. So there's a menu of practical mechanisms. This connects with the legal readiness frameworks, the measures, all the steps that we've heard about so far. By adding a further step, that of governance in use, what does good engagement look like? How can it be activated for the investor, for the asset owner community? And for emerging markets, this engagement can help attract long-term institutional capital, and it can strengthen resilience and market reputation. This is the upside of the focus, the commendable focus that we are all talking about here on sustainable finance. So in conclusion, fixed income markets finance very large parts of the global, regional, domestic economies, and they must also finance the transition. And at AFII, we strongly believe engagement is a really important part of that. And so I look forward to continuing how those ideas might be applied here in Pakistan and in other markets. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. You've had you did have the benefit of reviewing some of the bonds issued in Pakistan. How would you place Pakistan in terms of its maturity after, having sight of these developments?
They say that the time to start is never to be the first mover. You benefit already, I think, from a lot of international developments and financial infrastructure that's been developed. Whether it's at from a global financial supervision perspective, the Basel measures we've been hearing about, the financial reporting, all the things that Kharal had spoken about earlier, hugely important. These are all the enabling measures. So I would say that puts Pakistan in a strong position On the other hand, it's obviously one has to recognise the constraints of the IMF program. The need for risk guarantees for much finance. But I think that, again, there are important developments in blended finance globally where that is necessary. And I think it's about finding the spaces. So all that Hamid Sharif had spoken about, looking at China bond, the panda bond market, for example, it's finding those spaces where there is the potential and opportunity, if done right, supported by legal and regulatory measures. And from everything I've heard, this is going in the right direction.
Thanks. I think we are going in the right direction, but I do believe that we need a lot of capacity in this area. And I know that Khurram Lanani has worked with the Pakistan Stock Exchange to develop a report, which includes, of course, capital market recommendations. But before we get to that, there's one speaker that is waiting to join us, Ms. Yasmin Bartliwala, MBE, Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. I'll just give an introduction of Ms. Bartliwala. She is the Chief Executive Officer of Advocates for International Development, A4AID. She has held a number of significant leadership positions over the years with public and third sectors. Her portfolios include HIV, AIDS, drug and alcohol misuse, and criminal justice. She has undertaken work for the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, and has considerable board-level experience, having been on the board of a large NHS trust and governor of the University of Hertfordshire, chair of the Hertfordshire Police Authority, and has also served as a magistrate in the youth and adult courts. Yasmin was a recipient of City of London Women of Achievement Awards in respect to her work in the public sector. In 2022, she was awarded MBE for her work in human rights, rule of law, and international development in the Queen's New Year's Honours List. Deeply committed to the belief that law can be a force for good. Yasmin is very passionate about using law to create meaningful and lasting change. She was awarded an honorary LLD in July by the University of Exeter. And I've had the honor of dining with her yesterday, where we had a very, very interesting discussion on how we can bring the top legal experts from the United Kingdom to work with Pakistani institutions, government institutions, private institutions, regulators, to build capacity around climate finance, climate law, climate justice. Over to you, madam.
Thank you. Can I just say, firstly, thank you for inviting me to speak today, and also for the opportunity to reflect on an issue that demands clarity, purpose, and leadership from all of us. It would be fair to say that climate finance mechanisms are evolving and doing so rapidly, and we've heard what others have had to say on this point. Yet many countries lack the regulatory frameworks, institutional readiness, and specialist expertise that's required to navigate these instruments confidently and safely. Without that foundation, the promise of climate finance risks becoming a source of vulnerability rather than empowerment. But before I continue, let me begin with a simple introduction to say who we are. Advocates for International Development, or A4ID as we're also known, is a UK-based non-profit. We work very much at the intersection of the legal and development sectors. For the past 2 decades, we have mobilized the legal expertise of the global legal profession through pro bono partnerships with some of the world's leading law firms to support sustainable development and the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. We also build capacity across civil society, the legal profession, as well as other institutions, because an issue like climate finance is, after all, a whole of society endeavour. For instance, sustainable debt instruments require scrutiny. They require informed participation and independent oversight. Strengthening legal literacy ensures that communities, advocates, and local institutions understand the mechanisms affecting their futures and can therefore engage meaningfully in the process. So as the world accelerates towards more sophisticated climate financing, the divide is not only between those who have capital and those who need it. The divide increasingly lies between those who are legally ready and those who are not. And our role at A4ID is to close that divide. Our work in capacity building is therefore not simply technical. It has the potential to be transformative. We equip legal actors, including judges, regulators, practicing lawyers, emerging professionals with the knowledge, frameworks, and confidence important, that is needed to address such complex global challenges. Today, one of the most pressing of those challenges happens to be climate finance. And here at COP, where climate finance commitments are being negotiated and contested, it is really important to ignore, and impossible, in fact, to ignore a fundamental truth. And that truth is that climate finance is only as strong as the legal systems that uphold it. After all, investors, we've heard from Simon, need confidence, governments need clarity, and communities need protection. And all of this hinges on legal and regulatory frameworks that can govern climate-related risks, enforce disclosure, and support innovative financing instruments that provide meaningful accountability. And this, I suppose, is where A4ID fits in. Our model is simple, effective, and impactful. Through our pro bono partnerships, we can bring in world-class experts in green bonds, sustainably linked finance, SDG compliance, and cross-border investment. And we seek to direct that expertise not into single transactions, but into long-term capacity building. We strengthen legal systems so that climate finance can be deployed effectively, transparently, and in ways that genuinely support development. Now, let me give you an example of what I mean. We are hoping to launch a capacity building program in Pakistan, a country, as we know, profoundly vulnerable to climate impacts, yet increasingly engaged in the conversations around sustainable finance, as we've heard today. Pakistan's legal sector is facing fast emerging challenges, which include complex climate-related disclosure requirements, evolving ESG standards, and the legal obligations tied to green and sustainability-linked bonds. Through A4ID and with the support of our global pro bono partners, we plan to equip judges, lawyers, and regulators with the skills to navigate these issues and to do so with confidence. This includes training on legal frameworks for climate finance, understanding international best practice, and developing safeguards to protect both investors as well as communities. Now, this isn't simply technical work, it's foundational work. It's about ensuring that when climate finance flows, whether to Pakistan, to Amazon states, or to any climate vulnerable region, the legal systems receiving it are ready to manage it responsibly. Here in the Amazon, this message obviously resonates very deeply. The financing required to protect forests, restore ecosystems, and support indigenous stewardship will only be effective if it's supported by strong governance and strong legal institutions. So capacity building is not peripheral to the climate agenda. In fact, it's central to its success. And this is exactly where A4ID's contribution is distinct. We bridge the legal and development worlds. We bring the weight and expertise of global legal profession to the places where it's needed most. We help ensure that climate ambition is matched by legal capability. We demonstrate that the legal profession can be the driver of responsible climate investment, not a passive observer. And we show that pro bono work can shift entire systems when it is targeted, strategic, and delivered with integrity. We also show what capacity building, patient, thoughtful, long-term, can create that truly lasts. As COP reminds us, the stakes could really not be higher. Creating a climate-resistant future demands not only political courage and financial commitment, it demands legal readiness. This is the work A4ID is committed to. This is the impact of our pro bono partnership and what it makes possible. And this is how together we have the potential to transform climate finance into aspiration, and from aspiration into action here in the Amazon, in Pakistan, and indeed across the world.
Thank you. Thank you. It was very inspiring. I think the words pro bono and the world's leading experts will be music to my minister's ears. Because our country is facing tremendous financial constraints. And this is especially felt by the federal government of Pakistan, which is, very cost conscious. In fact, we have rules in place enforced by the Prime Minister that no government official can take ex-Pakistan, means out of Pakistan, leave without, having some austerity measures being put in. So that's wonderful. We're really excited to work with A4ID and really to host the best of the best in Pakistan in these thematic areas, especially, of course, climate finance. Now I'll ask Khurram Lalani to give his views on where he sees this debt investment or bond investments in Pakistan. Which climate areas do you see this being deployed, Khurram, in your opinion, in the near term and the immediate term? Are we talking about government institutions like large waste management companies? Are we talking about micro dams? Where is this going to flow, in your opinion?
Thank you, Bulent. So the list is endless, right? And Pakistan really requires financing at a scale. And
sorry, I'm asking where are we most ready to deploy this funding, in your opinion, in the work that you've done?
Right. So I think I'm going to highlight a few areas which I feel they're practical areas, and they can be transaction ready also. So maybe structured around clear cash flows, strong governance, and if you've got robust use of proceeds frameworks, which is in line with SECP frameworks, then I think those use cases can be developed further. One is obviously renewable energy. And I think we've seen that Pakistan has the most deployment of renewable energy in the last 2-3 years. And you look at the renewable energy numbers, I mean, they're astounding. Pakistan has literally doubled its renewable energy, pretty much solar, equivalent to pretty much the amount of installed capacity in the system. So now we've got 33 gigawatts, some say 35 gigawatt of solar electricity deployment. So renewable energy grid modernization is something which is clearly right up front. It can finance solar. It can also finance wind, hybrid systems. Batteries are emerging. and grid upgrades. And since they are hardcore assets with very predictable cash flows, plus they also have a very strong taxonomy alignment. If you look at Pakistan's green taxonomy, those things are already there. So they make them very suitable for corporate issuances as well as potential sovereign issuances. The other areas where we can really prioritize investments is maybe climate smart agriculture, and I think we have seen a silent revolution, which has already been done thanks to very generous subsidies pretty much all across provinces. So we have seen Punjab government taking a lead initially, providing a 40-60 subsidy, 60% by the Punjab government, 40% by the farmer, but has really transformed the landscape. So you go across those rural areas or the agri areas in Pakistan now, and you see quite a lot of drip irrigation, cold storages. You see high efficiency equipments. Solar again is one of them. And Hamid Saab talked about blended finance structures, and again, blended finance structures can be made bankable for FIs and corporates, especially around climate smart agriculture and food systems. Industrial energy efficiency and decarbonization, again, a very big theme. So you've got a lot of impetus now, given that the US and the EU especially, with their CBAM regime coming up. So we will definitely see energy efficiency use cases, financing of boilers, waste heat recovery systems, process efficiencies, electrification of manufacturing, on-site renewables. There's a lot of on-site renewables now across Pakistan, fertilizer companies, cement, chemicals, they're all participating. And I think that's the silent revolution that is happening across Pakistan. So you don't really see, every now and then there's a headline around how much, at what speed and what scale the industrial energy efficiency, decarbonization, renewable energy deployment is happening. But it is really happening at a very, very fast pace. And Pakistan has really emerged as a global storyline when it comes to solar deployment. But time is not really far when I think the same headlines will also emerge around battery deployment, around energy efficiency and decarbonization. So those are very potential, very transaction ready areas, in my opinion.
Thank you. I'll quickly go to Saim. Saim, you've heard Khurram. I mean, you've seen the kind of measures being taken not only in the private sector but also by the regulators. Do you see? I asked this question from Mr. Mirza. He understood it as offering fiscal incentives. No, I didn't mean that. I actually meant, do you foresee any incentives from the regulator in terms of a concessional rate being given to those companies that have Scope 1, Scope 2 standards, that have taken tangible measures for sustainable financing? Do you see these kind of incentives being developed, or does the potential to develop this conversation, the State Bank with the SEC, with the PSX? What is your opinion?
With the right incentives, we are seeing that some areas, especially the export sector industries, they have moved forward. They have scaled up their compliance with the European standards, and so as long as there's the right incentive, the private sector firms will invest in green technology. The current system is not equipped to deal with the scale of the transformation. Banks are naturally risk averse. And what we've seen is some progress from the regulators. So the SECP has shared some guidelines. The State Bank gave us the green banking guidelines. They're developing the green taxonomy, which is very important because it will provide a standardized definition of what a green asset is. and this will help banks to align capital with those priorities. So what we are seeing is the banks are implementing the new ESRM framework, which is the framework on environmental and social regulations. It's at the initial stage. Once this is in place, then we will see that banks will be able to identify firms based on what their emissions are, and so we are moving in that direction. We're not there yet, but once this framework is adopted, then yes, banks will provide more concessional finance to those industries which are more compliant rather than those industries which have high emissions. But currently, the system is not ready for that. We're looking at another 3 to 5 years before that actually materializes. As Khurram mentioned, in the short term, there are certain instruments which are available. We've seen a lot of progress vis-a-vis the solar panels. So that is a success story. He also mentioned about the agriculture sector. So that's an area in which we are very heavily engaged with the Punjab government. And we are seeing very strong results. So financing, which is being provided to the first-time farmers, and we're providing them the guidelines on what the sustainable practices are on whether water use or fertilizer usage or pesticides. And we're seeing the results of that. So, within the first year, the kind of offtake we've seen is pretty incredible. And the farmers are paying the loans back, which is excellent to see, despite the floods that happened this year. So that's another success story. We're seeing more bank financing coming for the energy, for the EV sector. So more electric vehicles are being financed through lending from the banks. But we are at a very initial stage. Much more needs to be done before we see more green bonds issuance coming through. And it will require not just the commercial banks, but the provincial federal governments and the international players. So the World Banks, the IFCs, the Asian Development Bank, the funding
So
that
ideally,
they are
you'd
bringing
like
to
to
Pakistan,
yeah.
that also needs to be linked with that
You'd like to see more
sustainable equation.
donor engagement and synergy with banks, right? So to afford blended finance at concessional rates to where it should go. What is your wish list for Punjab? What if I was State Bank of Pakistan and you were Bank of Punjab, what would you ask of me in terms of enabling Bank of Punjab to deliver for the people of Punjab? Because we're heading into the smog season. We're just emerging from our 5th season, which is the monsoon season. And at the end or middle of every season, we have a crisis, which has a huge price tag attached to it. So now we're entering into the smog, season, and in my opinion, this is a very serious election issue now for the people of Punjab. So, what would be your ideal ask? What kind of scheme, what kind of guidelines or framework would you ask from the State Bank of Pakistan?
As I mentioned, the State Bank has brought in new regulations, the ESRM framework, the risk framework. They're doing the green taxonomy, which is going to be very, very critical towards identifying
Sorry,
green
Saim,
assets.
what I meant was like they came up with a solar scheme, and it resulted in a revolution, which Khurram talked about. What kind of schemes in which areas do you envision? Where should the State Bank, deploy its power, I guess,
So,
in
Bulent,
this area?
the facts on the ground is that the SME sector is like 40% of your GDP. That's an area which is completely untouched. Even normal funding facilities are not available to them. Forget about funding for mitigation or adaptation. Similarly, agriculture sector, it's a priority area, but again, we see it gets very limited flow of bank credit. And so these have to be the priority areas where the state bank and the government need to focus on. We have identified, like in collaboration with international financial institutions, that there are very significant investment opportunities in these sectors. So agriculture, accounts for like 46% of your economy and about almost half of the emissions that come out from Pakistan. Green buildings is one area which is completely untouched, and it's in our view almost $100 billion investment opportunity, where we bring sustainable practices towards the construction building activity. So that's an area where we want the central bank and the government to bring in incentives. Data sharing is another area where we could benefit a lot. So if the regulators and the governments help bringing, some facilities, what we're talking about is really credit guarantees. That's what is required for banks to focus on these strategic areas, increase their credit to these strategic areas, and link this with the sustainable outcomes.
It's interesting you mentioned credit guarantees. Infrazamin CEO was joining this session, but she had unfortunately an emergency. Infrazamin is the largest credit guarantee company in Pakistan. It is a Guarantco UK entity, subsidiary. So we have little time left. I think I would request the Madam Minister to not only close the session, but also, kind of summarize the discussion. And I feel very strongly, not only myself, but Saim, Khurram, Mr. Hamid Sharif, and other experts that we usually interact with, leading experts, that there needs to be a sustained synergy, Madam Minister, between the two financial regulators and the Ministry of Climate Change. That's I think that's a need of the hour, so that the regulators get very clear directions from the federal government on where to make impactful pathways. Of course, this discussion should be informed by not only the donors, but also the international and national experts. Madam, please shed some light on that, and would you kindly give us the privilege to close the session as well?
Thank you very much, Bulent, and thank you to all the panelists. It was a very, very useful discussion that we just had, and so many new ideas and suggestions that I've all noted down, and hope that we will be able to continue even after the COP with these things. As you were saying, Bulent, this sort of synergy is definitely, I think, the need of the hour. We need to have more collaboration between the different ministries and between all the stakeholders. We have discussed in quite a lot of detail about how Pakistan is trying to be prepared, because in this situation, law and regulation is definitely important for unlocking the financial flows in the emerging markets. And Pakistan, of course, as has been repeatedly said, stands on the front line of the climate crisis. That is not of our own making, yet we face this monumental crisis, the monumental crisis also of deploying, of being able to mobilize finance for ourselves, both domestically and also internationally. I will just share with you a little bit of how what Pakistan is doing to change the paradigm. The first step that we've taken for this framework is we've made a very foundational constitutional commitment. So we have the Article 9A, which was enacted in 2024, which says enshrines the right to clean and sustainable environment. So this is enshrined in our constitution. After that, of course, we have the as Khurram has already talked about, the Pakistan Climate Change Act, the Climate Change Policy, the Pakistan Policy Guidelines for Trading in Carbon Markets, and so on. So a lot of things that we have already put in place as far as policy framework is concerned, so that we've also, of course, established, we're trying to establish a clear and unified green taxonomy. To demonstrate our global credibility, we have issued tangible financial instruments, including 500 million green bond and 20 billion PKR, green sovereign green sukuk, which of course signals our seriousness to our partners. We are fostering an ecosystem of trust through robust regulation. As has already been mentioned, the green budget tagging for fiscal transparency. And we are empowering our financial regulators like the SECP with its ESG reporting guidelines, as has been explained in some detail, the environmental and social risk management framework, so that the climate considerations are at the very core of our financial architecture. And on this bedrock of the regulatory framework, it de-risks investments and creates the predictable landscape that bondholders and institutional investors and international fund requires. Furthermore, our commitment is reflected in our fiscal policy as well, in that the recently we introduced the climate support levy and a new electric vehicle adoption levy as well. So now the readiness, as I have outlined, and also all the other panelists before me have also outlined, the readiness is definitely there. So, but there is still a lot to be done. Just a few things that have not been touched upon that I would just like to put out there for all of you to think about later on as well. We are developing a climate finance dashboard that will monitor live inflows of national and international climate financing all over the country. And one more thing that we need to think about is perhaps mobilizing Islamic financial instruments, because Islamic finance emphasizes ethical principles, risk sharing, and social welfare. So it's well aligned with climate goals. We could ensure that Islamic financial products, for example, sukuk, ijara, are not disadvantaged by existing tax systems and have clear legal enforceability. And we could leverage Islamic social finance instruments such as zakat and waqf also through supportive regulations that can channel philanthropic funds towards community level adaptation. Apart from that, much of everything that I wanted to say has been said. I really look forward to working with all the panelists that are here, especially as Madam said, the important thing is, the central thing is capacity building, and that is one thing. And as Mr. Andrew also said, capacity building is one very, very central requirement of Pakistan in all aspects, whether it's technical or legal or any other thing, of course. So I look forward to working with all of you and all our other partners, all the other panelists who have given excellent advice. And I hope that we can continue this conversation. That is the takeaway that I want you all to take, keep in your minds after this. We've had this conversation, but the Ministry of Climate Change, as well as other ministries, some of you have already mentioned the Ministry of Finance. We are all very keen to work with all of you to strengthen Pakistan's position, to make sure that we are ready for all sort of financial instruments that have already been talked about. So thank you very much once again. And thank you to all the partners who have helped to arrange this, this meeting today. Let me just mention them at the closing once again. The Karachi Center for Climate Change, the Sohail Universities, Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, the Bank of Punjab, and the Anthropocene Fixed Income Institute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Minister. May I just recommend for the ministry to consider like a permanent task force on climate finance, which includes legal, technical, and other experts, so that these conversations stay in a repository which is always available for the ministry and the other ministries, the NDC ministries. That's just a thought that came from your talk just now.
Absolutely. I think that's an excellent idea.
Hamid Saab, did you have some comments or questions before we close?
No, I'm very, very encouraged by what the minister has said. And I think it's really important that in Pakistan, across the various ministries, we do get coordination. I think Pakistan has demonstrated, I think as Siam or someone else mentioned perhaps, that if you look at the example of the solar panels and EVs, the market works in Pakistan, right? I mean, it works just like anywhere else. So I think the really important thing is for us, and I'm really glad that the minister mentioned this, I think we have to de-risk, we have to introduce de-risking instruments so that really climate financing can take off. Because if we look at examples around us, India, Bangladesh, even in North Africa, Morocco, etc., you find that the state has to move and has to bring in climate finance from the private sector by coming up with de-risking instruments. So I hope, we can have an ongoing conversation on this. But thank you, Bulent, for putting this together. I think it's been a great conversation, and I entirely agree with the minister that this conversation in Pakistan needs to be continued. Thank you again.
Thank you.
We can't hear you, Bulent. You're muted.
Sorry, Christian, should we end the session with your permission?
Yes, of course. Thank you. Thank you very much to all of our
Thank you.
fantastic panelists and hosts.